moving on, we have England v France. Le Crunch at Twickenham. What a contest this always is.
Yeah.
Always is. And there's no fewer stakes in this one. It's going to be just after it on Saturday evening, March 13th, 4:45 kickoff. That's local time, GMT, at Twickenham Stadium in London. And it's going to be refereed by Andrew Brace, which has the slightly intriguing kind of subplot of he was the guy who reffed their last clash in the final of the Autumn Nations Cup and had a controversial enough performance because
he did. He ended up like
Scooby-Doobious decisions.
I remember being annoyed with him when I was watching it live. I thought he was very generous to England, and he kind of let them in for that extra time. Once they got to extra time, it was all on France not delivering. But I thought they were very lucky to get to extra time because of one or two dubious decisions. But yeah, Brace has he was getting such vitriol from the French supporters that he had to bow out of going over to France to ref
Tocators. Yeah, that was ugly. You never want to see that, really. That is ugly.
No, yeah. So it's just it's funny to see him in charge the next time these two teams meet, and hopefully it goes okay for him, and he ends up becoming a non-factor, which is all we ever ask of
a ref is that he's not a factor.
As far as the weather's concerned, it's a bit dodgy up here this week. Generally speaking, there's a bit of wind, there's a bit of rain. I think the weather at the moment is suggesting that the worst of the weather on Saturday will have passed by kickoff time.
Which hopefully, and it can be true. Yeah. London has its own little microclimate that tends to be a little bit better than the general malaise that we have up in this particular neck of the woods. So hopefully, we have some clement conditions to get some lovely running rugby, because every time they meet, it's a class match, including the last time when the whole chat in the pre-week was, France have to play their thirds, it's over as a contest, and then no, it was a bloody brilliant contest that went to extra time, no less. So we're expecting something similar. England obviously at home in terms of the colour of the game, it's now ranked third v ranked fourth, with France having leapfrogged into third.
Yeah, that's right.
So third in the world plays fourth in the world. England's lost to Wales, having knocked them down. France getting up one spot despite having not played a game, which is curious.
Yeah, and curious to see two teams in the Six Nations ranked ahead of the likely winners, Wales. But I suppose they did a disservice to their ranking in
last
2020.
Year, they did. Yeah.
So that's why they're not up there. But it's got a fun dynamic. It's got World Cup potential written all over it as far as semi-finals and finals.
Yeah.
And obviously these are the two biggest, most established nations in Europe as far as just the general size of the unions and teams.
Yes, the playing populations and money in their pro leagues and all of that stuff. It's two heavyweights.
Not a small amount of history between the two of them as well. So it's always a big game. England have that going with a lot of countries, but no less so with France.
Yes.
As far as the rugby's concerned, from an English point of view, the game takes on importance for as much as any reason. I think it's just that this French team have kind of pulled their pants down twice in a row, because they beat them in Paris last year with their full squad, outplayed them, figured out their kicking game, figured out that all they want to do is strike off set pieces in your half, didn't give them any of them, defended them really well, struck with class tries, flooded the wide channels, exposed their defence as being quite narrow, very tough but quite narrow, and just got outside it, and scored some great tries. And then the next time they were completely short of players, and they put on just an awesome performance, stopping England off set pieces in their own half with just some awesome Sean Edwards defence, and then striking with some class tries of their own, and
Jalibert having a grand old game despite Entamac not being available, him looking like a classy young operator, which he is.
Keeping moving the ball wide. And this France team isn't going anywhere. Galtier and Edwards looks like a combination that is going to be in place for a long time to come. Likewise, the DuPonts of the world, all of these young stars.
The average age is in mid-20s with an idea towards peaking, as in getting to late 20s, early 30s by the time they're hosting the World Cup.
Exactly.
That's
right.
The age demographic, age profile of the whole squad.
So if you're England and you're looking at this young French team, who's kind of you did technically win the game in Twickenham, but it was dodgy as
you're
hell.
not feeling too proud about it in terms of the manner of the showing.
Yeah, and you lost in Paris last year. I think a defeat again in Twickenham this year would put them in a bad place psychologically against this French team.
It would. Giving them good chips in the bank, good memories to log into the bank in terms of we can beat England, we always beat England, that kind of thing. To get into the brains of your young hotshot side. It's a good thing for France, and conversely a thing that England will desperately want to avoid by putting a stamp on Twickenham, because we've seen France teams in years gone by, great French teams, turn up to Twickenham and get kind of starstruck and not really perform well and get kind of bullied, and that's definitely the dynamic that Eddie Jones wants to have in force.
Cemented into the young French team's heads that Twickenham's not an easy place to go to, which at the moment isn't cemented in their heads. So it's important in that sense. It's also important just because really they kind of sleptwalked into this sleepwalked into this competition and got caught by Scotland, got stung by Wales, and
now they're fighting for their positive winning record. They're 1-2 now, and they need to run the table to get back to 3-2, which is a worthy enough achievement.
Would have them staring down the barrel of fifth, and also just they haven't really put a complete performance together, and actually they didn't look too far away against Wales.
No, some of their attacking sequences looked great.
Their offense looked good. Their defense was trying to make plays. It was just discipline killed them. And they honestly weren't too far away from putting together as complete a performance as they've had since 2019. And I think that's going to be a huge focus of Eddie Jones just going into these last weeks, is just get one big performance to build from. That could be of untold value.
100%. There's more to play for in this tournament for these big teams, because as we were saying earlier, a few weeks ago, it was an absolute five-way melee going into the opening weekend. So like all of these, not everyone can win it. There's only one winner, but momentum is a real thing, and it does carry on. And it's nicer to win games than to lose them, because it's a results-based industry that all of these coaches are in. So from an England point of view, they'll want to up their performance. They'll want to keep getting more minutes under the belt of some of their key guys. They'll be hoping for guys like a Toji, rather than the penalty count creeping up, but just the playmaking count to be creeping up and having be a nightmare, which they know that he can be. It's about kind of building form back into these guys and rediscovering a bit of themselves, because they have had hints of it, but just not a cohesive full performance yet.
Entirely right. For Galtier's France, they might feel confident on the other side of things that they have England's number. But there for them the equation is about the tournament. They've got 3 big weeks now coming up, first against England, and then against Wales, then against Scotland. Chances are they're going to have to win all of them if they want to walk away with some silverware, which last time they took the field was every bit their expectation and their hope. It becomes tiring being raved about as a great team if you can't end up backing it up with any real silverware.
Yes, indeed.
And the longer it goes on, the more it'll become a question mark about them.
That's true.
As harsh as it is.
As far as psychological factors, it's a horrible thing to always be the nearly men is something to very much, it can affect loads of teams. Finishing second for loads of years in a row before finally getting it is something we can relate to with some of the Irish teams we've had in years gone by. But it is a young squad. As we were saying, the flip is true for Galtier. If they can win this game, then all the confidence in the world that they can roll into a home game against this much fancied Wales side and turn them over and get that momentum and try and keep it going.
Have a Grand Slam decider against Scotland. They'll be in great shape. They're going to be 10 points behind Wales when this game kicks off.
Yes.
So a loss of any kind is going to be damaging. They got to win. They got to keep the momentum going. They got to take this trophy. They feel they're the best team in it. They may well be right. So it's on them to deliver a big performance and avenge that Autumn Nations Cup disappointment as well.
Yes,
which stopped them from getting some silverware.
Indeed, So that's definitely where it's going to be for France. The other thing is, with it being 3 consecutive weeks, there will be scope for rotating that squad a bit, because as we saw in that game in the Autumn Nations Cup, they do have good calibre players, even a whole 15 or a whole 23 that are beneath the ones that will be started in the big games. They can kind of rotate these guys in and out and try and manage some minutes, as well as having some key guys come back in. So they have the squad to do it. I'd imagine the next few weeks will be a little bit of rotation from their point of view.
Absolutely, and then on that note, even they may be forced to do a bit of rotating themselves, because there are as there have been some complications again with their squad.
Still COVID complications.
Galtier's named his 31-man squad, which does see the return of the majority of COVID positive players.
Good.
The big headline is the return of 3 star players now from injury: Camille Shah, Vakatawa, and Roman Ntamack, straight back in.
Three high caliber weapons to just slot back into an already lethal looking team.
Indeed. On the flip side, Louis Carbonell and Arthur Vincent haven't been included. Now, Vakatawa and Ntamack have come in, so it could be tactical, but with Vincent I think he has a knock, because he's obviously been starting. I
think it'll be a straight swap though for both of those guys. Carbonell out, that means Ntamack's in. Ntamack might be on the bench, he might not. Vakatawa will probably almost certainly be straight back in if he's fit at all.
Yeah, well, without Vincent, you might think that might be the way to go. On the flip side for them, Bernard Leroux has left the squad with an injury. Rini Antonio apparently still suffering from COVID, as we said, or at least to some degree, still positive. So obviously, best wishes to the big man as well. So they've had to make changes there at tight head. And
Willemse as well.
Paul Willemse and Boutier are the Montpellier players who are contacts of the Clermont positive case, which we talked about at the top of the show.
So they're pending they're isolating pending a test result, and
basically, the all clear. The Willemse wasn't training. And neither was Boutier, I think, as recently as today. So it's possible they get the all clear, but if they're not training, it seems unlikely, especially, as we say, with the probable necessity to rotate as
although it'll make it tough with an Itoji taking the field opposite you, and you without your first two choices, like Bernard Leroux and Willemse not available to them. They're pretty solid guys that they've been relying on for the last since the World Cup.
We're looking very, very likely at a similar enough team overall. You're probably going to be having Bai, Marchand and Huas at front row. Roman Tefi Fanua will probably come in for Bernard Leroux. Then you've got either Willemse or Cyril Cazot, depending on Willemse's fitness. Jalonge has the incumbent at 6 with Olivon and Aldrich. There is scope for Dylan Cretan to come in, or maybe the man I'm perennially calling for, Cameron
Moki, who we haven't seen yet.
Take them on at the line out. Probably too late for him at this point, but you never know, they could throw him into the 23. Dupont will be at 9. The centres, for me, Fiku and Vakatawa makes the most sense. I know they have a couple of other options in there. They got Dante. But I just think they got Mofana as well, but I think if Vakatawa is good enough to be in the squad, I think they're going to get him straight back in there.
I actually think Fiku and him could be an ongoing brilliant partnership to bring to the next World Cup.
Yeah, because they had Fiku on the wing last year, which made a lot of sense, because that was the channel they were accessing, and he was like a beautiful link man in there. But at centre, he has been so destructive in this competition.
They have loads of lethal wingers with speed as well, and
Penaud and Thomas.
It gets him a bit more central, so he can distribute, and if he's playing off Vakatawa, then there's a lot of distributing force in that midfield, and with a guy like Vincent not available, who's another quality player, embarrassment of riches for France.
The big question mark for me is whether Ntamack should come straight back in, or has he, for me, Jalibert has been so good that I don't even think Ntamack is fully match fit and ready to go as a guaranteed starter. I think Jalibert's been great.
Yeah, no, it's true. I would probably stick with Jalibert and maybe bring Ntamack off the bench as an option. I think that would make the most sense, but they might not. They might go in Ntamack straight back in.
They might even go 6-2 on the bench just to physicalise up.
If they're shy of a couple of locks, it would be tougher to do that, but maybe they do.
Cretan and Woki on the bench, that's what I'm saying. I think what I would have said about this squad, I would have said a key selection for them would have been Boutier at 15, because he was such a key man for them in the last
in terms of unpicking the England kicking game,
exiting and just exposing the England kicking game, as you say, exactly, forcing England to exit from your own exit. I mean, he had a freak spiral against England, one of the great kicks.
It was very early in that game. You could see it. I think it was George Ford was the first man trotting back as it went over the boundary into touch in the 22.
He's just it was on the 5. He kicked it from his own in goal all the way to the 5. The whole length of the pitch he kicked it.
And then it was
just a long spiral.
but that's our plan. Was the look on his face? piece. It's but our plan. No. What happened to
what
our
do we
plan?
do
now? Which is often a thing that can unstick an English team if the plan doesn't happen.
Well, I think they still haven't figured out how not to strike off set pieces. They got a couple of nice counter-attacking tries against Italy, but by and large against Wales they were shut down off the counter-attack, whereas they struck well off set piece.
Yeah.
So that difference from an England point of view is everything.
Yeah.
So I think Boutier would have been such a key man. Obviously, if he's not available, he's not available. But if he's available to pick at all, I would go.
You'd be getting him straight in there just for the boot alone. But like that being said, it's not inconsiderable boot on Doolan or whomever else. They actually comparatively, but he's got a pretty good, like certainly compared to the long kicks you saw out of Garbisi and Italy and stuff that weren't all that long at all. No, Doolan can actually pump the ball pretty far, just not as far as Big Boot Boutier, but the tactics should still remain the same. As we were saying, we figured out how to play against this England kind of tactical hustle to try and get you to set up their offensive platform for them, rather than do that, just kick long. And lots of them do have the capacity to kick long. Even Dupont's box kick can go pretty long with a low trajectory as well. They just kick for distance and force England to try and run back at them on that counter attack and trust their Sean Edwards defence.
Yeah, that's definitely very much their plan. From an England point of view, the squad is sort of largely settled, I would say. There's scope for some change. I mean, I just think there's been so many headlines about what they should or what they shouldn't do.
As ever there is. The England media is
England
sports media is a different world, a different universe from anything we have over here, in terms of just the every bit of rhetoric is dialed to 11 with it. So you will hear lots of chat. There's always going to be chat about what England
Sam
should
Simmons is just being a thorn in Eddie Jones's side. Like if he could just give away a red card in one of these club games instead of scoring tries, some of the heat would come off Eddie Jones. But he has to just keep being exceptional.
He has to be holding that European Player of the Year mantra by consistently looking like the best number 8 in the world currently.
Dwayne Vermeulen might have a word with you, but
he hasn't
outside
been
of
playing that much currently.
He was
with the Bulls. He did win the Curry Cup for the Bulls. I didn't love the look of some of his showings earlier in the season. Just in terms of form, I'm looking at form. Like I would have said, World Cup 2019 version of Dwayne Vermeulen is still a better player.
But, it's weird that he's not in there.
It is. He should be an option for them. It's true.
That said, they have their squad now, which is set in stone now for the last 2 rounds of the competition. As far as Eddie Jones is concerned, he was saying Sam Underhill is too late back. He's not going to come back in more than likely, despite playing for Bath at the weekend.
There you go.
So
no room for Underhill, and he's a useful asset for them in terms of breakdown messery.
They've had Wilson in there and in the back row. There's probably scope for changing that a little bit. But I mean, I think the big question that has been lingering is is that midfield right? It doesn't look right. It doesn't feel right. Is there scope for putting in Ollie Lawrence, who hasn't been given a proper opportunity in a big game yet?
No, he played in the Scotland game and they just never gave him the ball. So that's a curiosity. I definitely agree. They are a little bit like, just when Tuolagi's not available to be selected, their centres become instantly less balanced, and I think Lawrence is a better substitute for his presence than what they've been going with in the Ford, Farrell, Slade axis. The other thing is actually little Marcus Smith playing brilliantly at the weekend as well for Wasps. He's another one who's been in the squad, who's arguably playing better than both Ford and Farrell at the moment. Just the balance of it didn't look great, and certainly if they looked a little bit soft in that Wales game in terms of their defence, as well as just a little circumspect in terms of their counter-attack. They don't quite have the ballast of the run, the kind of hard line sitting them down in the midfield, and that was true even a few years ago in that, was it 2018 season, when just a year out from the World Cup, when again Manu Tuilagi was out with an injury, and they ended up with their centres between Jonathan Joseph and a few other options just being a little bit lateral, standing a little deep, not really penetrating or sitting down these defences, which they're going to need to do.
Well, that's what the screen is the foundation of everything that they do. It's all various different types of screens.
Yes.
And one of the key focal point of a screen is the guy hitting the short line.
Yeah,
the guy hitting the short line has to be a threat, and he
Yeah.
has to be an option where he can get the ball if it is just heavy traffic and you need to take it up. He can get the ball and have a positive contact.
It can't be an option. Then it's crossing.
Well, You just better give it to him.
Yeah.
Pass it out the back, you can forget about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's the whole point, that backline doesn't have much balance. I also think Elliot Daly's form is pretty questionable.
That's true.
Is
too.
there scope for
straight in
Maylands?
there? Yeah, well, you saw what Bristol's form has been brilliant, and you see what Callum Sheedy's doing in a Welsh shirt when he comes in.
Yeah, and Sheedy would have been a guy pre-tournament who I would have had like question marks about. Like, he's kind of just a ship it on kind of 10. Would have been my critique, but he's actually like he facilitates a lovely attack.
He does
for both Wales and Bristol.
Indeed.
So you got to give him props. So there is
Maylands
scope.
does a lot of that from fullback for them too. So yeah, maybe getting someone like him in. I don't think they will.
Or even Anthony Watson to fullback and the Wasps flyer, Adogwu.
Who we haven't really seen yet, but he's brilliant as well. The other guy's Ben Earl, who's been brilliant off the bench for them in every kind of
I would start
game.
Ben Earl. I put Curry back at 6 and start Ben Earl.
Yeah, because it's more of a like for like when Underhill's available and they were doing the Curry Underhill thing. That's kind of a good balance to their back row. It makes them combative, and then similarly in the centre. Yeah, it'll likely be the Ford, Farrell, Slade axis that we've seen all tournament long. I think it's probably a little bit unbalanced, and then you couple that with Elliot Daly with his patchy form at the moment, and there's question marks about it, but there are still positives too. Like they can definitely do something with that team that they've named regardless. Like there's definitely scope for them to play really, really well as that team and put France away with some nice scores. But we're just highlighting that there are a few other options available to Eddie Jones as ever.
I'm just curious. He hasn't gone to the tinkering with the squad, and he's under more and more pressure. He's kind of dug his heels in, but I definitely think there's adjustments within the squad he has to make a few changes. That said, whatever team he selects, they're going to have a winning picture and a real chance to win this game. They are not far away from being the great team that made it to the World Cup final. Indeed. I don't think so.
No, they're not far at all. We saw glimpses of it, if not the full package just yet. We've seen kind of hints at what they can do, and I suppose we will pivot on from the squads then and look at their winning conditions for the game. How do they go about kind of putting this much fancied France side to the sword at home and kind of re-establishing themselves? Kind of, they're still champions as it stands, although they're probably not going to do it. So putting in a champion performance at home against the young pretenders is something they want to do.
Like we say this so often for so many teams, but England especially for me are a team that really does get energised by a fast start.
Yes,
more than any other.
They do.
If they can get, like, obviously if they win the toss, they're going to choose to kick off.
They're going to go to the corner. They're going to try and pin them back. Try and get them to kick it out into the touch and strike. But by any means necessary, by hook or by crook, setting up a line out or a scrum in and around halfway or in the French half, from which they can launch a pre-packaged set of phases where they open the French defence up with power carries on both the inside and outside, loads of different options, fluid passing. You saw them get it going a couple of times with Wales. I think in particular, like Jamie George in there is a really classy ball player and a good runner. His link option for that Anthony Watson try was great.
And Itoji as well can work in those screens. Curry, as we know, Billy V, getting those guys.
You saw the blueprint. The two tries they scored in Cardiff were the blueprint of how this England side can and should attack. And
doing it from early doors, from a set piece where they have a plan, is how this team has established itself. It was what the model was under Eddie Jones in 2019. Striking from early doors with, like, I remember the try they scored against Ireland to start that season.
2019
season. The 2019 season. It seemed like it was pretty much down to the pass. It was designed in advance of the game. Understanding how to manipulate Ireland's defence. We're going to take this line, we're going to kick it off, get the line out, work them in this part of the pitch, and then move it left for a Johnny May try in the corner kind of thing.
Simple, and it was well executed. And they did the same. Sure, the All Blacks in the semi-final, they blew them away in the first quarter, and then once they were on top, they are very comfortable when they're on top with a couple of scores lead. Then they can relax and they can kind of control a game from there. What they struggle with is when those plans don't come to fruition and when they don't set their rhythm and then they're stuck in a bit of a scrap and a little bit of a biddy game. Then they kind of do struggle to kind of jumpstart themselves into gear. It's one of the curiosities.
It's the same off kick return as well. Like without that set piece to launch from, to provide them with a bit of direction, they tend to look a bit flat, and that's where the kicking game suffers as well. Because if you remember, the kicking game with all the different options they have, it's so versatile and so well done that I've seen them manipulate back threes and pendulums and then find the space, knackering the fullback as well as just getting the ball behind him. It was
another aspect of that 2019 showing was poor Robbie Henshaw out of position at fullback, and they moved him every which way with good probing offensive kicks and found
the nice kick to the corner. But that doesn't happen off slow ball and sitting in the pocket. The back three is not going to be moved. You're going to have less room to kick into, and your kicking game's going to be worse. So finding a way from a multi-phase scenario to generate a bit of deception, a bit of momentum because the Edwards defence is oppressive. And to be honest, this pulsating English offence against the Edwards defence is one of the best matchups in the whole tournament.
It is. And it would be nice to see it. If we just see the Edwards defence swarming and England a little bit off with their passing,
that's them winning. Them winning, and you rarely see two sides looking great on opposite sides of the ball, because usually the way one side looks great is by stopping the other from doing it.
Yes, indeed.
So that's the dynamic. But generating quick ball, it's got to be, they've got to find a way to find shape. Really, if you're looking at a multi-phase situation, you want to set up rooks in the middle of the field and have shape either side of it, and then generate just those little screen pods that they have, which give them the options to come onto the ball, generate find a soft shoulder, get over the gain line, and then it's quicker ball, and then you can work from there as they do off set pieces.
Little offloads with their tight forwards are exactly how they break down organised defences as well, because you don't give them a chance to set and then rush.
Just even to make a little bit more space to work a kick, to work a territory winning kick,
from a territory winning screen where they find the extremities, which they were doing nicely again. It was nice to see that rediscovered. It was that old Sarri shape, that screen, the kind of the benefit of having all those distributors in your back line, having three tens essentially almost in terms of the Ford Farrell Slade thing. It gives you value in terms of you can set up little arrowhead pods that we see very often in very very many teams, but you're confident that guys like Jamie George, Itoje, all these guys have a pass in them, and they can pull it back or take it up, and if they win their contact,
to their link man,
there's a link man or an offload there. Just giving this England side their options is the key to getting everything started. It comes off set piece comfortably to them. They need to find it a little bit more in the multi-phase in the midfield if they're running back off kick return, if, as we suspect, France are going to kick long and not give them those ins with the set piece. Then they're going to have to try and generate that a different way. They're going to have to find that shape very quickly on transition. It's a work on for them, because they did it well once against Wales. They did it off kick return. One of the tries, I think the Ben Youngs one was off kick return, and it was nice to see because we know they have it in them. They just hadn't really been doing it. So it's one little glimpse of how they can do it. But they need to do it regularly. They need to do it routinely, because this defence will be oppressive, as you say, and it's going to be tough to break them down.
Indeed, and against this Sean Edwards defence, it's a curiosity. It's an interesting situation where they give away a rate load of penalties, and they still give away a lot of penalties. We saw that against Ireland. They give you a lot of ins in terms of red zone attacks if you want to take them, if you want to bomb the ball into the corner and try and win the forward battle. But they are absolutely miserly in terms of giving away tries from those kind of areas. They're a brilliant defensive team in and around their own goal line. It's the easiest part of the pitch to defend, and they do it with energy and vigour, as all Edwards defences do.
That's right.
So I think one of the winning pictures for England is to punish the penalties that France give away. I know there's a lot of talk about English discipline, but French discipline is no great shakes. If they can punish the French penalties with 3 pointers, working their attack in the French half, and then when France give away a penalty, no thought of going to the corner, knock the ball over the bar and just punish it with points, and then work on the exits.
France do respect the 3-pointer. They will be rattled if they can build a score 3-6-9. That's enough to get them under pressure, and then you couple it with, I think it was John Mitchell earlier was highlighting in the week for England just the amount of ball they play off 9, the amount France do play off 9, which makes their 10s as rotatable as we were saying, but it is really the Dupont train is what keeps them ticking. So that would lead you to believe that pressuring Dupont is a huge part of it, and scoreboard pressure to France will add that. Like if they're behind and chasing, and then you're in Dupont's face, kind of make sure the pillars are there, or whatever you call it, guards they call them, but Pillars is better. Pillars don't go walkabout. Pillars stay there, mind Dupont, don't deprive him that running game, force him to pass first mission, and then once he's passing, then you can bring that line speed to yourselves and try and shut down the door for their tens.
Mitchell was dead right to flag that, and he seemed bullish in his intent to take the Dupont running game away from them, which I think is what you have to do against France. You have to track him, you have to mark him, and you have to make him not a factor. The game becomes a little more difficult when you've got another X-factor man in Vakatawa in the 13 channel.
True.
That does broaden the danger on the field. I mean, they have been 60% off 9 in the Six Nations this year. They've also not had Vakatawa on the pitch, and he's a game changer out there. No question about it.
And without Tuilagi, as we were highlighting for England, they're just a little bit less physical in the middle of the park, and Vakatawa is well able to break a contact and get a hand free, and they will run dangerous support lines to a man, everyone in that back line, so there's danger for sure.
The defending this French team is a very tough task, and good defences have been caught with their pants down, including this English defence. But I do think it starts with the dominant forward performance. As much as you want to say you got to keep the width, you got to force them inside, they're going to try and, if you play a narrow blitz, they're going to try and get it outside you, and they're going to very often succeed, and you're going to be in trouble. I do think there's a trade-off there with doing what you're good at, and that's I think discipline has been the number one thing that they've talked about this week. They've got Wayne Barnes into the camp, they've done all this sort of stuff where they're trying to not have a situation like they had against Wales, where Toji was given 5 away and they just gave away so many. It was ridiculous. But the margins are small there. Like with all of those Itoje penalties, the margins were small, and there was a good play to be made in there that he just couldn't make. And I think the English winning picture has to be about Itoje making those plays, Tom Curry making big plays.
It's not a penalty, it's actually your penalty. You win the penalty instead.
Especially if you're talking about a French team that's going to be without Leroux and potentially Willemse as well. Getting on top of them physically there's potential for Johnny Hill and England and Itoje in the second row there for England to start winning that battle, to start picking off the balls, to start winning contacts, driving them back, making things messy for Dupont, always roughing him up and making sure he's not a threat or a factor, keeping the ball slow, and then working turnovers, and just never allowing France to set. To be honest, they are both teams that are guilty of a little bit of petulance if things aren't going their way. They can both rack up a pretty egregious penalty account if they're struggling in the forward battle and if they're not having things go their way. We saw that. Ireland painted a difficult picture for France for much of that game. From a French point of view, like when you compare the two offences, night and day in terms of quality, but it was a 2-point game because the Irish pack were kind of all over them, and they were giving away penalties, and they weren't quite right in the scrum. And England are going to have to fancy, as a pack who've beaten up Ireland's pack many a time. They're going to look at that game in Dublin a few weeks ago and think that's how we get a cut at this French team. We beat them up front and be more clinical than Ireland. Then which you would have faith. Like England's clinic, we're accusing England's attack of not being clinical. That's not compared to Ireland's attack. It's compared to where England are. I'm not even accusing them of that. I think they might be about to get it right. They could be coming. I think they are building is what they were doing. They started out the tournament just refusing to attack, and they got duly punished, and since then they have been working on it and working on it, and it has been improving. So if they can marry a really bullish, a traditional English hard-nosed day out in Twickenham where they make the French really feel every collision, really get themselves in there, spoil the set piece, have Itoje jumping at the line out but not jumping across the line out, not being fired across, not forcing plays, not playing the man in the air but actually getting his hand on the ball this time, or disrupting the maul and that kind of thing. If he can make those plays, the likes of Julian Marchand, like his toughest run out in a French jersey, he seems to have it all to himself, himself at the moment. Like he just makes so many plays, but getting big shots in on those kinds of players. Charles Olivon as well, getting big shots in on them. Imposing yourself physically, I think, is definitely England's route to winning this game, and then also working their attack really well to punish France on the other side of the ball. But it's a stern task. John Mitchell's defence against this French attack is another of the great matchups of the Six Nations. It's true. And so we've got a big bruising forward pack and some potentially elite offences going up against some potentially elite defences as well. So it's a box office game, and as much as England are out of it, they could be in a World Cup final or better, or go one better in 2023. I'm sure there's still low enough odds to be right in the mix, and they will
indeed.
be come that World Cup. So this is a big game.
It is a big game, huge game from England's point of view, and from France's point of view as well. I guess is that's the other thing. Have you anything else to say on England? I think that is the way. That is the recipe for them to win. Is definitely to be bullying. But from France's point of view, it's a slightly different equation. They need to. Well, they saw it. They almost got it in the Autumn Nations Cup, and they did get it the year before in the Six Nations. Yeah, they know what England are going to try and do off restart. They know they're going to try and pin them back. So even without Boudier, whoever's on exit duty knows to pump it long. That's where the first step comes. And then, just solidity of chase and a cohesive line. And they can shut teams down in the middle of the park. They saw out that Ireland game that was a 2-point game. They saw that out very effectively in that last phase, which is also encouraging. They can back their fitness now. They can do that. Totally. So they want to be able to really proactively stop England with their defence. I think that's going to be a big part of it, because it really does. It upsets it. It gets under England's skin when they can't get a thing off. And France know that.
It's been an interesting defence, this Edwards defence. They have been galvanised, and they've been, what I would describe them as more than anything, is clutch. In terms of
big plays of big moments.
The defence never looks more solid than exactly when it needs to. And sometimes, like in the early goings against Italy, it looks a bit soft, and they kind of soak some yards pretty easy all the way to their 22. And we actually saw them do that against Ireland once or twice as well. Also struggling under the high balls, but they soaked some yards, especially on the short side, which they're going to have to just keep an eye on. But once they got into their 22, once the big moments came where the teams were threatening their line, they really did turn it on. And the key man for me is Aldrich, because he's the guy usually who ends up making the turnover play if there is one to come.
Or they end up doing it with just sheer ferocity of collision. Like, to be honest, actually more of their proactive defensive plays aren't like it's not like the Warren Gatlin Wales team where you can see every single member of every single of the whole pack and the bench putting hands in every single breakdown to slow it up. They don't really do that. They actually just set their line and come out and apply pressure through the hit.
The hit is exactly right, because they're not actually an all-out blitz either, especially out in the wide channels. I think Vincent has been really great. He's been a sharp defender, and without him it'll be curious to see if they do put Vakatawa back in there.
Fiku has been a rock. His big turnover play in the Ireland game, some of these great showings. I mean, he'll need a bit of that. They'll definitely need a little bit defending. Of that.
I mean, this English offense, when it hits its pump, has looked nigh on undefendable. And if you're allowing them quick ball, because France don't compete that much at the breakdown, and allowing them a chance to sort of get those multiple screen options going, making the right read on those plays and making the right hit when you're kind of on your heels is a very tough task. It's nigh on
impossible. It starts closer to the base, and it's a collision based kind of thing. You're going to literally knock them off their rhythm. You don't want England set, because England's ideal tempo is terrifying for any defence, and it's not what Sean Edwards wants, and they'll be highlighting that. It's like, no, we don't want them executing their screens at this lovely clip that they like to move the ball at. We'd rather, the collision be really dominant, have us get out of the line, Aldrit or someone, smash them behind the game, and
big
then,
reads
then
as
a
well.
bit of a scrap comes, and then the guys have to retreat, and the shape, while there, isn't sweeping forward. It's kind of statically kind of checking itself, and that's when they can get really proactive on being just a cohesive blue wall that puts in its big hits and its share of big hits, and it does that to a man. Their whole pack and their whole back row, even that was what was so impressive about the Autumn Nations Cup game, when they were shorn of all their first choice guys, and the guys that they brought in the pack did the same kind of job and were really hitting hard and making it a mess, and you had guys competing at their breakdown to upset everything at source. Upset their whole template is about setting up an offensive set piece in your half. Let's make the set piece a scrap first, so it's scrappy ball, and then we'll make the first hit a dominant one for us, and then suddenly the attack's dead. In two plays, that the attack's dead, and that is what I've no doubt that's what Sean Edwards wants to see out of his charges for the whole 80. Granted, it's a rugby match. England will have purple patches. You accept that. There's nous to both teams' experience on both sides. They'll be aware of England's threat. They'll be aware that they might even get some shots off. But by and large, containing them and upsetting their rhythm is a huge part of winning this game. They're away from home. They're in Twickenham. They know that they need to stymie England first.
Yeah, and they need to get the ball out of their half as well, because that's when England can kick it back to them. They can work. They'll back themselves to have a decent chance in the kicking game. If it is sort of stagnant kick tennis, as Scotland did, they kind of edged the game that way by just managing the field much better than England did.
That's true.
And I think the key involves getting out of their own territory, because as much defending as they have to do in their own territory, there's only so
Ideally,
much you
you
can do
don't,
against
yeah.
England, and they will give away penalties, and I think England will kick them over.
Yeah.
So like they just don't want to be in a position where, like they were against Ireland, they started the game slowly. They started the game largely in their own half. Couldn't really get out. Their kicking game wasn't there, and this is my fear with the lack of Boutier. Like I would ideally, if he's clear, I'd love to see him in there because I think he gives them that extra potential to just get the ball out of their half.
That long punt is such an anti-England device that it's a good value for just this game alone. If he's going to sit in the pocket and pump it down to their 22 every time,
as good as Doolan has been, he struggled against Ireland's kicking game, and they struggled to get out.
He's a little bit vertically challenged, so he is, and England are going to kick the ball. There's no doubt about that. So
indeed, so if they end up in their own half for much of the first 20 minutes, I would imagine England will have, you know, not the whatever 3-point return that Ireland had. They'll have like at least 6, maybe with a try in 10 or something like that.
Could be more like 16 or probably
14. When England are at their best, it is 2 tries. Like if you give them multiple ins in your own half, and as good as the defence has been, you know, you could be looking at a minimum 3-pointer when they are entering your red zone at pace. So you have to manage the field better and win that kicking game just to relieve pressure, as you say, away from home. To not allow England to get the fast start.
Yes.
The key, though, obviously for France, the thing that sets this team apart is the offense.
It is. It is. Like as much as we wax lyrical about the Sean Edwards defense, because to be honest, it's worthy of that. Like the absolutely seismic change in France's hustle and hunger on D has been very, very impressive and attributable just to that man alone. But what really galvanised this side when Galtier came in, and then you had Dupont just coming on the scene, is that just high tempo, high energy, beautiful flowing offensive rugby that we know them so well. It's jouet, it's traditional French stuff, and they do it so well. They have so many dangerous strike runners. Their whole backline are lethal, and they have a 9 who is just world class, is exactly the word for him. He sets a lovely rhythm, lovely tempo, picks lovely passes, is a dangerous runner himself, is a very combative physical guy, good defender too. Like he's just a complete package at 9, and everything goes through him. It's le petit général.
I do think that has to change in this game, though.
Might do, because they're going to bring that pressure.
60% of plays off 9 is a dangerous one against England, because they have a physicality threat and they have a jackal threat. And winning the game that way is a harder picture for France.
You'd sooner see Ficou in the pivotal playmaker role out a little wider.
Vakatawa for me is, if he comes into the team, it is a game changer. It remains to be seen what they do, and maybe they'll have Mofana or Dante in there. That's fine. Then Ficou does become the main man, and he has been a brilliant link man so far.
He's been brilliant in the tournament so far.
But like if you look at what they did last year to get outside this England defence, they actually had Ficou involved on the wing, and they had him all the way out there linking up with strike runners and making plays happen, flooding that channel, that sort of those extremities almost outside the numbers they call it in the NFL, that like 5-6 meter space on the touchline, flooding that with multiple players and executing really tight like 3-on-2s and 2v1s
with just
and finding
really good hands and good instinct. Instinctive support lines are just what this team are all about. Every single one of them. And Pinot wasn't even in the team last year through injury, and he's come back in and he's straight back in with great support lines.
Teddy
and
Thomas
stuff.
likewise lethal, but getting the ball to those extremities, offset piece, really testing like Slade's capacity to defend the 13 channel against.
He's a guy you're going to ask, like you want to ask questions of that. What we're a little bit suspect in terms of the balance in their centres. You want to flood that channel with multiple
offset
options.
Piece off first phase, get it away from the English pack, move it wide off first phase, and get some strike runners into those positions, and then stretch the English defence.
It may yield tries for Dupont. You shift him from the point of you shift the point of contact from him, but he will be there. His
tracking run is always great.
So
but I think they should play a little more off 10, a little more, a good few more 2-pass plays, getting the ball wide, getting the ball away from the English forwards and into those channels where their defence
keeping it alive as well. Like they are good at that. They have the touch of the Fijian, same as the old school. Like if they're still on their feet through the contact, pop it back. No need for a ruck. If there's no need for a ruck, don't have a ruck. And the ruck is the enemy. You don't want rucks. There are curries and Itojis in rucks, whereas out here there's just space. Like that's the mantra for France. They want to keep it alive, and Dupont will track all day. Like if it's a 2-pass play, I'd expect him to be at the next breakdown, or even if there's not a breakdown, ready to receive a pass. And even if he's not, the guys have good enough instincts that if there's a chance there, even if it's a winger or even if it's a tight forward, if they know that if they get a ball back and it's over there, they will just pop it on and try and flood those wide channels with dangerous men.
Keep the tempo high, keep the play wide, stretch out the field, take the rucks away as a key factor, and obviously win the kicking game as well. But when you're in offense, you're trying to probe, you're trying to strike off first and second phase, really and truly. You do need
kick return and transition, because you know England are going to kick to you, and you are very, very good in the open field. That transitionary rugby is something this French team are very good at. We've seen them punish Ireland consistently for loose kicks with really nice transitional plays and good attacking, sweeping counter attacks.
At their best, they have this like beautiful synchronicity to their, it's like they're the Borg. They're all tied into each other,
attacking rugby.
Yeah, they all know exactly where to go. They're just different pieces of the cog, like the All Blacks at their finest in terms of just knowing where they should be and linking up and finding space. You're amused by the
board comment. That's where I'm at. I'm trying to think what is futile. Rooks are futile. 3-pointers are futile against our tries.
Exactly. Exactly. They're just like wonderfully synchronized and wonderfully at home in those chaotic plays, understanding each other and understanding where the space is and how to exploit it. And their instincts are unmatched apart from by the All Blacks at their best.
Indeed, and they have a great track record for being the good guys and flying the flag for attacking rugby, certainly at our expense, but also England. Teams like Ireland and England who've been bitten by the bug and fetishising attacking kicking to the point that they're doing it on every play. France are just the side to punish that kind of carry-on with beautiful scores, because that's what it should. Like, if your only goal with good clean ball in the middle third is to kick it so you create a 50-50, that's not a good plan. No, and especially not against France. But it's not a good plan anyway. Even if it works, it's you should have more ambition with ball in hand than that. But in terms of transition, that is a big part of setting up their offense. I think they're probably better placed than this England side to operate in those chaotic exchanges. So if they can generate more of them, that's probably a good recipe for this French team as well. Yeah.
But keep a Toji out of the game, limit the indiscipline. And then at set piece, they're looking for parity. They were given a bit of a scare the last time out by Ireland.
They were, their scrum, which has it's a formidable scrum, but it was he was getting bullied. He was getting bullied, so he was. And if
without Antonio as well now going into this game,
could be potential. And then the other thing is, they have a decent attacking maul if they want to go to it, but I don't think they should be going to it at all. I think they should be trying to get good clean ball off the top, and as I say, 2 pass plays, move it around.
I think outside of the red zone, mauls are wrong at the moment. Unless you've got a really good maul, it just gives the defence a chance to turn clean set piece ball into phase play ball, which is just way easier to defend.
Even if you concede a few meters in the maul while you're folding into a shape, that's
mauls aren't right. From lineouts, you need to be going off the top and striking at the moment. It's just the best way to.
It's another part of keeping Itoje out of the game as well, because he will suffocate a slightly loose maul every single time.
Unless you're hoping they give away a load of penalties, but honestly, my view of it is that I think England, I don't think they're too far away. I actually thought their performance against Wales was them nearly putting it together. And I think if they're just a little bit sharper, a little more match fit,
which they likely will be after a couple more
they'll turn
weeks.
Those penalties, half of the penalties they gave away will turn into positive plays.
And possibly penalties for instead of penalties against.
That's enough to turn the game around.
The difference between being fired across the line out and being pinged for that, or for playing the arm versus playing the ball, the difference is a penalty to you or versus a penalty to the other way,
or just a turnover.
Indeed.
Itoji's a playmaker, and he's at his very best. When he's not a step off the pace, he makes all the plays and he does it clean. So I don't think that performance is too far away, and I think France need to be wary.
They don't need to invite him into the game.
If they're thinking he'll give away a penalty if we do this, or we pat him on the head, I just think you're asking for trouble.
You are poking the bear, which is a silly idea. No, you should be moving it away from the bear towards the space. It's a simple enough philosophy. It's something that this team are all about, and it's why we love them so much and love to watch them. But keep it high tempo, attack the space, try and catch the English guys a little bit on their heels, and take your scores clinically. That'll be enough. If they can build up a lead against this England team, the cracks will start to show, and I think the confidence is only a brittle one currently, given that they've lost a couple of games. So if France can get on top of them early, smother their offense smother the English multi-phase or even phase play with their good proactive defence, as well as executing their own plays on offence themselves, Yeah, that's obviously the recipe for them. It won't go all their own way. It is away from home. It is Twickenham. That is a factor. They should be expecting a tight contest. They conversely can't be too shocked if they go 10 points down. They'll need to be able to gather themselves.
They don't want to be going 10 points down.
Obviously, it's not one of their. It's not one of their winning conditions. But don't panic is one that is written on the whiteboard in the background, just in case. Yeah. But ideally, they get on top early. They prove themselves the more clinical side a little bit further along in their offensive development, if you want to look at it that way, because they've been doing it for a little bit longer than England, and that's what they want to make the game about. If they want to make it a shootout, they'll win. If it becomes a scrap, they probably won't.
That's probably the dynamic, As far as how you think it'll go, who you think will win, where's your head at?
A combination of shootout and scrap that leads to a scrappy shootout that is won
That's
by...
kind of what they did against Ireland, A scrappy shootout is how they won it. They were losing the scrap but won the shootout, and that was enough for them to win the game.
Indeed.
Because they took 2 tries.
2 tries to the 1. It's a tough one to call. It's a very tough one to call. Do I see England losing 3 of their first 4 games? I didn't see it pre-tournament. Do I see France losing at all? It's tough. I'm leaning... Well, like my heart says France are the better team, and my head also kind of says that, but it also says that with all this COVID stuff and the interruptions in camp and then guys in and out,
doesn't seem to be falling for them fate-wise.
Maybe we see a slightly disappointing French performance and an England back on the horse win by a couple of points or something.
Yeah, I was kind of half thinking the same thing, but I mean, I did back France for the Grand Slam pre-tournament.
You got to stick your guns then.
I think I'm sticking with that. I also think, there are 2 great sides, and as I say, the matchups between like Edwards' defence and the English rhythmic offence, and then this French jouet offence against the John Mitchell miserly defence with loads of playmaking and Itoje and the like, is just a really fun matchup. I think it's a great game, and I do expect it to be a great game. And I suppose my rationale for France, I think England will score 1 or 2 great tries when they do get their rhythmic offense going, but I think Edwards' defence is good enough to hold them to that. And then France, it'll be on them to generate enough in attack on the other end to win the game that way and not give away so many penalties that just conceding 2 tries ends up being 20 plus points on the board for England. Like, it could go either way. I just think when they're 2 great teams, the one that is in contention is probably likely to have the edge, psychologically. It's just an intangible, but England, if they lose this game, it's not good. They don't want to lose this game, but they know that it's not like they've lost anything really. They're already given up the Calcutta Cup and the Triple Crown and the Six Nations. That's all gone. Yeah. So I mean, like, in that sense, it's almost like a dead rubber for them. Except that we know it's not. Like in the same way as an Autumn Nations Cup, but when France are still gunning for a Grand Slam, I just think it's a different kind of thing, which is perhaps what pushed Wales over the edge in that last 20 as well. They just wanted it more, and I think when you're playing for something, you're going to want it more, and I think that's why I think France, just to pull it out of the fire, but really close, could go either way.
5-point game or something either way. Well, toss a coin in your heads. Let us know in the comments down below who you got.
It's a great game,
it's just a fantastic game, and it's Saturday night's entertainment. It's Le Crunch, It's England France. What more can you say? It's a very crunchy contest, and we're looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for watching that video. If you're new here, please do like and subscribe and ring the bell so you get notified when we upload again. But mainly, please drop a comment down below. We enjoy hearing your thoughts on it. Thanks.